Welcome to Living Yoga. My name is Darren Main, and in this podcast, I like to talk about all things having to do with yoga and wellness and self-improvement. And in this episode, we're going to focus on something that may seem unlikely, but I think is an important topic, and that is yoga teacher trainings. Because a lot of people do trainings because they want to become a yoga teacher, and other people do it just to deepen their practice. But there's so many trainings out there that it can be hard to know where to go or what the best option is, where you're going to get what you need. So in this episode, I'm bringing in my good friend Pete Guinosso. We have done trainings together in various capacities over many, many years. And we are going to talk about how you can get the most out of a training. Is it right for you? What trainings you might want to avoid versus which ones you want to check out. Cliff notes, anything that has our name on the teacher list would be a good choice. Shameless plug. I am going to I'm going to put Pete's contact information in the show notes, along with links to his current training, as well as information on how you can connect with me on social media and elsewhere. We really encourage you to drop your questions and comments so that we can respond to them. And if you have any questions for Pete or me about teacher training, you're welcome to reach out to either or both of us. With that, I'm going to bring in Pete. Pete, it is so good to have you.
Hey, Darren.
You and I go back so far.
Yeah.
Like, I remember when we were both young and vibrant and full of life.
No way.
Yeah.
That's a long time ago.
Now we're old, vibrant, and full of life.
Right.
But we've done a lot of work together over the years. And a big piece of that work is I ran the Yoga Tree teacher training, and you were one of the primary teachers in that training. And now you're off doing your own training, which now I'm a part of. So the roles have reversed. And I want to talk about that, but I'd love to hear sort of your origin story. At some point, you were doing yoga and thought it would be a great idea to do a teacher training. I'm wondering how that worked out for you.
Well, I like the origin story, and I think that it kind of began with 30 years of running and cycling and just beating the crap out of my body, and then turning toward yoga when I used to work for Merck Pharmaceuticals way back in the day. My background science, I worked in research and in manufacturing. And I met you in probably like 2000, 2001, I think. And I had just started my yoga practice. And I was transformed by it. I remember one of the yoga teachers asking me a question about whether or not what I thought of yoga. And I said, when I first started practicing, like, it's a great workout, kind of like, thumb on my, mouth going, it's a great workout. And sure enough, with a diligent practice, after about 6 months to a year of practicing consistently, I started noticing other transformations happening other than my abs getting stronger and more flexible. I felt like I was being a little more truthful. I felt like I was being a little bit more kind to myself, a little more compassionate. I felt like I was kind of following a different path than I had been in the past. And I think part of that is that, later on I read the Yoga Sutras, and I started realizing that I was following the path of a yogi pretty much, right? I was finding ahimsa. But the origin of the training stuff was more around just being inspired so much by this practice, and then diving into a teacher training because I just wanted to learn more about it. And that changed my life. I think about looking back in 2006 when I did my first teacher training. It was a month-long training down in LA with Anna Forrest, and it kicked my ass in all the great ways, kicked my spirit. and
She has that effect on people.
Yes, right, exactly. And it helped me find my voice. And I remember leaving the training thinking, well, I don't really want to teach. But I got offered a job offer on my way back from LA to San Francisco up on the 5 to teach in a yoga studio in the East Bay one time a week. And I was like, I guess I'll do this. And then I started realizing the benefits of it, and I never really looked back. And in fact, I've
Yeah.
been teaching since 2006. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for
Well,
the question.
I'd love to drill down on that because this is something
Yeah.
I know you've heard it as one who leads teacher trainings. I heard it for years. A lot of people go in thinking, I'm going to learn about
Yeah.
yoga. I want to learn the anatomy, the alignment, the
Yeah.
philosophy, whatever. But that transformative piece that some people see coming, but most do not. They're really shocked
Yeah.
to like find out that they're doing a lot of crying, a lot of aha moments, a lot of
Right.
the pieces of their life that seemingly have nothing to do with yoga, their relationships, their work,
Yeah.
everything being questioned and reevaluated. I have my own theories, but I'm wondering, like, what was maybe for you personally, or maybe some of the students you've worked with, like, why do you think that transformation happens versus, say, going and taking a college course, or
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just to affirm, I think you're onto something there, Darren, because I have so many people come to my training, just exactly what you said, trying to, oh, I forget the kind of languaging, but it's like, I want to nail this pose. I want to know the in and out of the pose. But I think, yoga is a gateway to understanding ourselves better. It provides a space for us to be vulnerable, to walk the path of healing, to kind of confront some of our shadow aspects of ourselves, and that encountering is kind of what transforms us. We have to encounter what we have to transform before we can
Mm,
transform it, right?
yeah,
And so for most of us, we have, I jokingly say, part of my running and cycling was running away from my traumas as a kid. I was bullied, had a somewhat I say discipline focused father is a good way to describe it. And so, I jokingly say that I felt like I was Forrest Gump. I was running, how Forrest just kind of the trauma of his mom was too much dying, so he just kept running. And I felt
yeah,
like I was doing that same thing. And then eventually yoga is kind of saying, okay, just stop running for a moment and then just pause for a second, start looking at what's going on in your world. And
yeah,
that was the aspect that transforms. I mean, it's so hard to describe the transformative aspect. I'm kind of curious as to how you describe that, or what's your spin on that,
yeah.
Darren?
My new mantra for you is "Run, Peter, run." um, no, I think for me it was the same thing. Like I had this life changing experience. I was newly clean and sober and found yoga, and it was like coming into my body, starting to
Yeah,
realize that my body wasn't the enemy. Even as a young gay
right.
kid, and at that time, it was like learning just self acceptance. But then when I went to teacher training, it was like
Mm,
my head
yeah,
cracked open, and like a whole new framework to see myself and the world
yeah,
entered, and it was like such an exciting time. It was like
yeah,
everything about my life changed inside a
yeah,
month. Like,
yeah.
and I didn't see it coming. Like I had no idea. I thought, oh, I'll meditate a lot and I'll do a lot of
Yes.
yoga, and
Yeah.
I didn't nail the handstand just yet, but
Yeah.
I nailed a
Right.
lot of other stuff. So,
Yeah.
um, well, we were talking before we started, and I was recently consulting with someone who had just done a training, and I won't say which one because I don't want to trash another training, but it wasn't a very well prepared training, and it was
Yeah.
not what she was looking for. It wasn't, I don't think it prepared her to teach, and I don't think she had that transformative experience that
Yeah.
we're referring to.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, I mean, obviously, when we do trainings, we hope people sign up for our training. But I've always said when I was running the yoga tree training, there are trainings that I
Yeah.
considered competition, not in a bad way, but like in the same league where they were offering that holistic, transformative, well rounded yoga experience. And then there were these others that were just sort of jumping on the bandwagon because they could or should or whatever. I'm wondering what you feel goes into a training like yours that is transformative as people are considering what they should do. Like, how do you separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question because, like you said, people find yoga for different reasons. And I think, doing any type of yoga is transformative. Like, I jokingly say that hot yoga is the gateway yoga to exploring the deeper aspects of ourselves. And, you got to start somewhere on the path. Um, I do think there's some questions you need to ask yourself before you enter into training, and I would say that's kind of held lightly with just being open to the experience as well. I've had people come to my training wanting a certain experience, but they're inspired to do these trainings for some reason, and I think there's faith and trust in the process. It kind of has to be part of it, but you know, um, for example, there's like you mentioned, there's trainings out there that focus on philosophy. There's trainings that focus on anatomy. There's trainings that focus on alignment, and the training that I offer is focused on those things, but also has a broad and big, deep grasp into going deeper. Is kind of like the catchphrase, which I always kind of laugh at. Like going deeper. What does that mean? There's
The
exercises
shallow
in
yoga
place.
teacher
Yeah,
training.
right, right, exactly, right. Dive in the deep end thing, and so the deeper aspects I think are these. When I provide in my training is these self-reflective moments where we have for example, a workshop around ethics. And before we dive into ethics, though, it's like, because ethics are important to become a teacher, but it's also
Yeah.
what values do you hold? It's important to kind of cultivate, to reflect on what your values you hold before you do the ethics exercise. And there's also recognizing like these values or ethics that I'm cultivated over the years are not mine. Maybe they were handed down to me from my parents or from religion or from school or from peer pressure groups, So there's these moments where we question our just, our basic understanding of who we are. It's kind of a big
Yeah.
aspect of that going deeper. It's like, oh, like I always jokingly say to my students, like, the main aspects of this practice are breathe, feel, notice, and be curious.
Yeah.
Just curious about everything. Like, why is my hamstrings not flexible today? That's interesting. What's that about? Oh, if I do the pose this way, it feels much different. Oh, if I breathe up to my heart, I notice some tears there. What's that about? And just like it
Yeah.
just over and over again, coming back to breathe, feel, notice, and get curious about the experience. And I think when you provide that space for people, it's just like, that's kind of what cracks it open. So I think just kind of back to your question, and I'll let you speak, and so I don't want to speak too long, but I think some of the main aspects that kind of separate my training from other trainings is, there's space for you to practice teaching. I offer two practicums where actually people teach in front of a group of people, so they kind of codify that experience. There's this deep inner work that we do. There's the morning intensives that provide a space for people to kind of go into their own practice
Yeah.
and touch the breath with their heart. So yeah, I mean, there's just so many ways you can approach this yoga. And so, I always jokingly say that there's enough. Yoga is enough for this lifetime. There's not enough lifetime for all this yoga.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so
Well,
much to do, right?
I have to
Yeah.
say, I think the thing that sets your training apart is the really good-looking philosophy teacher you bring in.
Mm,
He doesn't
obviously.
know much, but he's pretty to look at, you know.
Look in the mirror right there,
um,
Darren. There he is right there. So
yeah.
handsome. Yeah. Right.
Um, so I think you're really onto something because I think it's like I think it's similar to like what I consider a really good yoga class in that
Yeah.
some yoga teachers, especially newer teachers, and it's not bad, we were all there, but they
Mm.
talk so fast, they're trying to fill every minute with an alignment cue or something, and you never
Mm.
have the moment to just drop in and
Mm.
learn from the pose, not just learn alignment, but learn, like, what is it teaching you about yourself. And I think a lot of teacher trainings that just try and cram in everything you could ever know about yoga into 200 hours, A, you're never going to do it. So it's sort of a fool's errand. But
Yeah.
B, that those moments of self reflection, whether it's in group sharing or journal writing, or there's a lot of ways we can do that,
Yeah. Right.
enable people to digest not just in their brain
Yeah.
what they're learning about yoga, but in their heart, in their body, and really realize that yoga becomes that metaphor for life, right? How you
Yeah.
address the uncomfortable pose is probably how you address the uncomfortable conversation with your spouse.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I'll add into that. You know how much I love quotes. You and I both adore quotes, and we share them all the time. Pema has a beautiful quote that I think encapsulates kind of what we're talking about. She says, if your everyday practice is to open to all your emotions, to all the people you meet, to all the situations you encounter, trusting that you can do that without shutting down, then that will take you as far as you can go. And then you'll
yeah,
understand all the teachings that anyone has ever taught. So,
I love that quote. Oh,
so pretty, isn't it?
it, yeah, she could recite a dirty limerick and it would sound like spiritual poetry, but
Right. Totally,
but I
dude.
mean, like, yeah, that's a particularly powerful quote from her.
Yeah.
Um, well, eh, somebody listening to this or watching
Yeah.
this, depending on where they're taking this conversation in, is maybe has thought about doing a teacher training. And when I was doing the yoga tree training, I would do consultations and info sessions. And we always got to the yeah, but portion of the
Mm.
program,
Yeah.
which is where people would say, I'd like to do a training, but I'm
Yeah.
too old, but
Yeah.
I'm not skinny enough, but I'm
Yeah.
Christian and it
Have it.
might conflict with my
Yeah.
religion, but I can't do a handstand yet,
Right.
but. We all have our
Yeah.
different buts. But what I always told
But
people, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is those buts that
yeah.
you encounter and work through are what make you a good teacher. You
Mm.
working through your hamstring injury makes you more sensitive to
Right.
your students who have injuries. You
Yeah.
working through the balance between your own personal religious views and harmonizing them with a yoga practice is going to help you do the same for other people of faith,
Mm.
and on and on and on.
Yeah.
You being an older teacher will inspire other people who are, in the later half of
Mm.
life to be fit and active and
Yeah.
practice mindfulness. So that I see our brokenness. There was a saying in marketing, your mess is your message. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's yoga right there. So being that you're the messiest person I know,
Right.
um, next
Such
to
a mess.
myself, of course, I'm
Right.
wondering if you have any thoughts on that, like the yeah buts. Like if somebody's listening to this thinking, oh, yeah, that sounds good. I should do a teacher training. But I'm wondering how you answer that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're kind of hitting upon something that really resonates with me is like, if I get my acting gear, I will be a better person and I'll show up better in the world. And I think, we all have butts before we actually start somewhere. And I think, there's a beautiful quote by Rumi. He says, if all you can do is crawl, then start crawling. And yoga meets us where we're at, right? We show up on the yoga mat. We might be super tight. We might be monkey mind, kind of thoughts, jumping thoughts to thoughts. But all we do is show up in the best way possible and start doing what we can do. And there's never a better time than now to start living the life that you dreamed of. I mean, like, and getting clear about what that might be, because most of us are kind of just working through life almost sleepwalking. When I worked for Merck, I liked working for Merck. I made a lot of money. I had some really cool, I had a cool community. but it didn't really light me up the way that teaching yoga does. And so I wouldn't have known that until I'd done the yoga practice and in that really deep way and done the training. And so I think, what my whole thing is, if not now, when? When is there going to be another opportunity to do these things and walk the path of purpose and who you are and figuring out all these things that have, the importance to us in living the life we dream of. Yeah. Is that how you see it too,
Yeah.
Darren? I'm kind of curious. Yeah.
Definitely. And,
Yeah.
I remember once this woman signed up for the yoga tree training, and like after she signed up, she learned she was pregnant. And she
Right.
called me up freaking out like, "Oh my God, I'm pregnant. I can't
Yeah.
do this." And and I just said, "I totally understand if it's not the right timing for you, but
Yeah.
being pregnant
Yeah.
is part of life, and
Yeah.
yoga applies to pregnancy and non-pregnancy
Yeah.
alike." And she decided to do it, and over the
Yeah.
course of her time in the training, her body changed daily, and she was sort of like this incredible rock star in the program because everybody was learning about the unique needs of pregnant women at different times in their pregnancy. And she was learning about her body and bringing all this mindfulness and intention
Yeah.
to the pregnancy itself. And I think all of us are like that. Like,
Yeah.
we never step into the same river twice.
Yeah.
So when is the right time? Now.
Yeah.
Right now.
Right. Yeah.
um, So I have one more question for you, but before I get to that, if you want to learn more about Pete's work, his training, and just all the other great stuff he's doing, or get a good dad joke, because we also share dad jokes in addition to quotes.
Right.
PeteGyoga.com. Did I get that right?
Yeah. Correct. Yes.
Uh, and you can get information on everything there. Um, so, Pete, the one thing that many things surprise me watching students go through training, but one is that whatever you think going into the training is not what comes out the other side. So some people go in thinking, I want to teach, and realize, oh
Yeah.
my God, I hate teaching yoga. Some people are like, I just want to deepen my practice. Never do I ever want to teach. And they wind up becoming Pete Guinosso.
Yeah. That
Like,
was me. That was me, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Some people think they want to teach heated vinyasa yoga and wind up teaching
Mhm.
restorative, or
Right.
learn that, wow, prenatal is my calling, or, I really want to teach mindfulness meditation. It never works out the way you think.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you have any advice to somebody who's like, I don't know if I want to teach yoga. Should I do a teacher training, or
Yeah.
maybe I don't even know what I want. I just have this gut feeling that I need to sign up for something. I'm wondering
Yeah.
if you have any insights into that.
Yeah. I mean, I think you're kind of hitting upon just kind of what we talked about is like, when is the right time? When is, I don't necessarily want to become a teacher. And, it doesn't, the skills we're learning on the yoga mat through the teacher training benefit us off the mat. And what I mean by that is like, when we get clear about our ethics, we show up in a better way. When we become more compassionate and kind through our yoga practice and through teaching and find kindness for ourselves, we're showing up in a better way for ourselves and our community. One of the main aspects of a teacher training is learning how to listen. And what I mean by that, the kind of broad listening is like, listening to your brain and all the thoughts that are running through it, listening to your heart, as your heart's beating, listening to your co-teacher next to you teaching the class, listening to the teacher. And there's a beautiful quote by Paul Tillich. He says, the first duty of love is to listen. And so I feel like no matter how we show up on the mat in our yoga teacher training, no matter how many fears we have, one of the main aspects of our yoga is teaching us how to listen. And this is,
Yeah,
I often think about how yoga is really this pathway to learning how to love ourselves better or more in a bigger way, learning how to love
yeah,
each other in a better way. And so, yeah, I think, putting the teaching aside, I think it's transformative. And, you know, if you're being called in some way to it, but you don't necessarily want to teach, just jump in and figure it out and see it works for you.
Yeah.
You know, at least you'll walk away with a really strong, amazing community.
Yeah. You know, the listening piece, like as I think of the best teachers I've ever worked with, the ones that learn that skill of listening, because we live
Yeah.
in a world where nobody listens,
Yeah.
right? We're all
Right.
talking over each other and trying to prove our point, or we don't feel seen or heard
Yeah.
or emotionally felt or connected. And if somebody can walk into a yoga class and feel like, wow, this person really heard me. They didn't have a solution to my torn meniscus, but they listened to me like vent about it for a few minutes.
Right.
Or they didn't solve my marital woes, but I got to feel
Yeah.
seen. Like
Right.
the struggle I have matters. And I think a lot of trainings don't focus on that skill. And I would argue that it's more important than knowing the Sanskrit word for Bhujangasana. I guess that is the
Right.
Sanskrit word that for cobra pose.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
flip it around in
Yeah.
my head.
Right.
um, so Pete, if there's anything you want to say about your training, you can do that now. But I just want to say I'm honored to be part of your training, doing just
Yeah.
a small piece of the philosophy. And I know we have a few spots open in the upcoming training, and then you will be doing future trainings if this one doesn't work out. But I'm
Yeah.
wondering what you can say is just practical stuff like, do you have scholarships? Do you have
Yeah.
prerequisites or requirements, or just how, if somebody thought they might be interested, how would they like get more info, like an info session or a consultation, that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, just but briefly, I just want to thank you for this time to share with you, and it's always inspiring talking to Darren. And just kind of adding on to your last statement around, there's a beautiful quote by Maya Angelou. She says, "People forget what you've said, people forget what you've done. They'll never forget about how you made them feel." And I feel like that's part of our teaching, right? It's like having people feel first of all, and then kind of move through the feeling and start to feel actually
Yeah.
better. Maybe there's some stumbles along the way, but eventually feeling better. Um, yeah, so you can check out petegyoga.com, and I can send you an inquiry letter. You know, I have a training once a year. It's a 6-month training. I'd love to have you be a part of it. And you know, both Darren and I are here to support you in any way possible.
Yeah. Well, Pete, it's amazing. Like, there's something. Have you heard the Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers song "You Can't Make Old Friends"?
No, I'm not. I like it already.
It's an amazing song. It's a duet that they did something like 30 years after Islands in the Stream.
Wow.
And they're singing about how you can make new friends, and that's great. But there's something about old friends that you have
Yeah.
this history. And I feel like you're one of those people in my life.
Mm.
You've just always been there. It's hard to remember a time when you weren't there. And
Right.
yeah, you're just one of those teachers that I love seeing in passing.
Mm.
I love working with you.
Mm.
And I love that even post pandemic, we still get to partner on things like your training. So
Yes.
thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Yay. Aw.
Oh, dad love. Oh, wow, you made hearts. That's great. um, so please drop some comments. We will get to them. Like, share, subscribe, and certainly check out one of our classes. We both have classes in person and online, and of course, the training. And we'll see you in the next video.